We're ready to start the meeting.
All right, it's 7 o'clock, and I would like to call this meeting of Kimberley City Council for October 26th and being held on the traditional homelands of the Ktunaxa people to order. We have a kind of our usual ministerial order resolution, which basically has a couple of whereases and a resolution that specifies we are having the meeting in council chamber, that some members of council and staff will be attending remotely, and that we're broadcast live on the City of Kimberley YouTube channel. Could I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Kittle. Second, Councillor McBain. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Madam Corporate Officer, do we have any late items this evening?
There's no late items.
All right, hearing none, could I have a mover to adopt the agenda? Councillor Oakley, thank you. Councillor Goodwin seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Next up, we have the adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on October the 13th. Councillor Dallum moves. Councillor Roberts seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. All right, first up this evening, we have a delegation from Sustainable Kimberley. Andrew Bond will be making the presentation. Welcome, Andrew. You have a presentation slides that council has copies of on the iPads here. We'll be able to follow along. You've got about 10 minutes approximately to make the presentation, and then after that we will have questions and comments from council. So,
many thanks, Mr. Mayor.
So take it away. The floor is yours.
Well, many thanks, Mr. Mayor, and to the council. Both I and the rest of my group really appreciate this opportunity to speak to you. So I'm going to keep this fairly brief. You can see who I am. And then I'm just going to go through the presentation, and as Mr. Mayor said, we'll do some questions afterwards. So without further ado, let's just get this shared. Hey, are you guys able to see the presentation, or are you still seeing me?
Yes, we are, Andrew.
Excellent. Okay, so Sustainable Kimberley. I am the founder, but I am not alone. We have a good group built around us. So, okay, some things are slow here. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is a little about who we are, what we are, and why we exist, why we believe we need to exist. Some examples of the projects that we want to bring to Kimberley and why these will benefit Kimberley. And our message today is about partnership. It's about working together with the city and with other partners within the community to move towards an even better future. And then, as I say at the end, we will go through some questions. We want to build a stronger, more resilient, attractive, and greener Kimberley. And I want to make one thing clear right up front. I'm not an outsider coming in who wants to make Kimberley look like Calgary or Banff or any of the big ski resorts. That's not our intention. I grew up in the north of England and Scotland, around mining towns. So I appreciate the history behind Kimberley, and we don't want to change that. What we're looking to do is to help bring back some of the community feel to areas that have maybe become grey with concrete over time. And through that, deliver a stronger community, bring people more opportunities, preserve our environment. We live in an incredible place. And really importantly, is deliver a strong economy. I've been a small business owner for many times. I've worked as a construction manager. I am familiar with numbers, and we are running this non-profit as it were a small business. and we want to deliver benefits to the businesses within the city and the city itself. So, working with the city, we spent a lot of time looking at the official community plan, which frankly is a superb document. I spent time working for the city of Fort McMurray on their downtown redevelopment, managing sustainability. I've read a lot of OCPs, and this is truly excellent. And the community, environment, and economy really match what the city is trying to deliver. So we see ourselves as a partner to help you deliver on those commitments and make those into reality. So this is something that I think a lot of people don't realize. You look at the downtown of Kimberley, the urban core, and it is largely grey. There is very little green space left in the city centre. The landscaping is largely limited to the Plaza. It doesn't feel like a mountain environment anymore. We have lost that. And part of that is trees have matured, they've become over large, and they've been removed. And I am guilty of that myself. So these are sort of things we want to address to bring that nature back into the city, but at the same time, increase the visual effect that will help bring tourists into Kimberley and keep them staying. Because I don't think I'm alone in hearing visitors say, well, the Plaza's wonderful, but the rest is tired. And I'm speaking honestly here. It is quite tired in a lot of areas. What can we do to bring us up to those tourist town standards? Because tourism is our primary industry these days. We have the Plaza. It is an incredible centre for the city, and we're very fortunate to have it. So let's take some of the ideas there and spread them out with the core. So I won't name the site, but I'm pretty sure most of you will recognise this site on the way into Marysville. It's what people see first when they visit the community. It's not a great start, but at the same time, that industry is bringing jobs, it brings revenues, so we can't push that away. So how do we find a middle ground? So we, as one of our first projects, we are working with the landowner to bring landscaping around the periphery of the site. They are willing to put aside a buffer zone, and we will, as Sustainable Kimberley, bring in the landscaping through grants. Now that has a massive benefit to the landowner because they will see fewer bylaw infractions. To the city, we have a more attractive city, more likely to keep tourists, and to the residents of Marysville. It's going to feel a lot nicer for them. But that's just an example. Again, moving forwards, we can do a lot of things at low cost. So there has been a trend, and these are all Canadian pictures, to remove parts of asphalt in parking lots, alongside sidewalks and roads, to create urban green spaces, just pockets of interest. And these also allow stormwater recovery. That lowers the costs to the municipality because you're no longer having to have as much infrastructure. So green infrastructure like this, and there are lots more, can reduce city operating costs and capital costs because you're no longer looking at such large infrastructure to cope with the runoff. The Plaza. Now, it is ironic that this parking lot is on the agenda twice this evening. Think alike. So again, this is a scary place for a pedestrian. I am disabled, I have a service dog with me and cannot drive. So I have to walk through here regularly. And dodging traffic is not fun. So we looked at it, and this was an exercise, and said, well, what if we made it a pedestrian-friendly place? What if we changed the focus from the car to the human being? That changes what we can do. We can put in a a green walkway at minimal cost. We can tie in the Tourist Information Centre, which is currently an island unto itself. We can show pedestrians where they need to walk. And furthermore, we can actually, if we with me, please. If we move the pedestrians onto the new walkway along the old laneway, we can actually potentially remove the sidewalk along the street and turn that into an area that, again, is green, can cope with snow removal, can cope with stormwater drainage, and presents an incredibly interesting facade to people driving past, but has economic benefits. By having that pedestrian walkway, visitors can now access the rear of buildings. So we already have the Friends of the Kimberley Library at the back. Well, imagine if building owners are then able to open the rear of their buildings, use unused space, bring in extra tenants, extra revenues. That opens up a whole new level of utilization of this area. So instead of having to build more buildings, we make more efficient use of what we have. So that's good for the landowners. It also brings increased tax base to the municipality. I'll leave it there because I think there'll be a few questions. Benefits. You've all got this, so I'm not going to read it through verbatim, but our ideas are that we take the best practices out there. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need a consultant every 10 minutes. Most of the information we need is available from other organizations, through the local authorities. We can reach out and ask organizations to give us the benefit of their knowledge, and that helps reduce costs greatly. A lot of the work that we are considering and proposing can be done at a very low cost, particularly if we start bringing volunteers to the table. We can bring grant funding to the table the city may not normally be able to access. So there's a benefit to the city in fiscal terms. And we appreciate the city is constrained. That is not unusual. Many cities are. So taking that limitation, we're willing to work within that and bring these ideas that are affordable. So we're not just asking you to deliver. We are going to be coming to you with problems, but also the solutions for them and what we anticipate they will cost. So our ask is, my apologies. Our ask is relatively simple. As the main landowner in the city and the main organization, you have a wealth of knowledge, information, and resources. We would like to be able to tap into those, be able to work with planning, to look at some of the mapping, to see if there are ways we can change pedestrian access, that we can change cycling access. Access for ourselves in terms of being able to deliver projects. So would we be able to come and work on the Platzel parking lot, for example? That may be moot after this evening, but those are the examples we're looking at. And also partnership. This is two ways. So even now, working with RCR, Core Outdoors, Kimberley Trail Society, and yourselves to present a bid for CEREP funding. And if it doesn't go for CEREP funding, we intend to take it forward through other channels. But that partnership brings a wealth of knowledge that we can all benefit from. The sum is greater than the parts. So moving forward, we are already a registered society. We have our board of directors. Kyle, your colleague, is one of them. We are already working towards financial stewardship. The Columbia Basin Trust Nonprofit Advisor Program, we have been through their initial intake. They have accepted us, and we are working with them to ensure that we have the necessary controls in place, that we are a transparent and fairly run organization. partnerships and funding we're beginning to reach out for. We had intended still to be in stealth mode, but with COVID has become an opportunity for additional funding. So we've decided to put our head above the parapet and help. Project delivery, my background is includes Stephen Royer, a landscaping expert. We have 2 members of Wild Sites Board who bring their expertise as well. We've got a lot of knowledge that we can share with you. And planning for the future. So you've just run an excellent outreach program regarding active transportation. That again is on our list of things that we would like to work on, including mobility for the disabled like myself. So that's really an idea of where we are starting from. We are young. We've only really been preparing this for the last 3 months. We've already achieved a lot in 3 months. We're probably going to achieve a lot more over the next few years because I'm stubborn and we will make it happen.
That's awesome, Andrew. Thank you very much for your presentation. Council, comments and questions. Councillor McBain.
Well, first off, thanks, Andrew. That was a good presentation, and I'll just make a brief comment that I love the intent. I love the ideas that you guys are bringing forward. I guess my question would be to probably to Scott. What kind of constraints are we looking at? Like, you know, if we've got a society that says, hey, we're willing to take this little pile. I'll just use one of the asphalt cutting or the concrete cutting ones as an example. It's on city property. Are there any constraints with them working within our city land? Or, I mean, I'm just kind of curious.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, that's bargaining in at work.
Yeah.
For example.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to know.
May I add?
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that we are working with Columbia Basin Trust is to ensure that we have things like safety manuals in place. Again, as a construction manager, I am rather explicit about making sure safety is a priority. But those are the areas that we will need to work with you to ensure that we have our resources in place, for example, insurance. And that is part of that partnership. And it's not about us telling you what to do. It is about us offering our partnership and us both benefiting.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to pose an idea. Through COVID, we've been walking and walking and walking some more and walking all over the place. And a lot of the times I'm walking in places that I grew up and places that were well cherished and places that were looked after with boulevards that were mowed and places that were just really kept up. And right now it's a dog's breakfast out there. People are not paying any attention to their yard. They're not paying any attention to the outer area of their yard. In years past, I would have been proud to get in my car and drive my guests around to show the lovely place where I lived, but I would never ever do that anymore because it's horrid. It's just horrid. So I am suggesting that maybe there is a piece of your sustainable perspective that might look at the beautification of the community as a whole, not just the area that is surrounding the Platzl or the area that is like the entrances to the city. The whole city is tired and people could use a little poke in the rump, I think, to be able to live up to some expectation of beauty. So I said my piece. So
Thank you for that, Sandra.
Councillor Oakley. Oh, may I answer?
Sure, to me, yeah.
One thing I would say is that I clearly didn't put across correctly is our target is largely the urban infrastructure of the community. And that's because there are already a lot of existing societies dealing with the outside of our community. The heart of a community is a tough challenge, largely because it is city-owned property. We are looking at beautification. I hate using that word because it's so politically charged. But for example, we've started to work with One Tree Canada to look at opportunities to bring tree planting into the community. And Home Hardware with Kim has been very good at supporting us with that. And one of the areas we looked at was that, well, trees are being chopped down rapidly underneath power lines because of the BC Hydro regulations, but they're not being replaced. BC Hydro is a partner with One Tree Canada, and we haven't started this process, but what we'd like to do is to approach them and say, can we develop a program to replace those trees under power lines with appropriate trees, and for them to provide both the education and some funding towards that. So that's a big part of improving homes. We cannot go in and tell people what to do, be it business owners or residential owners. But if we can raise the tone on city property, for example, we can do much more. Okay, I'll stop there. I can keep going for hours.
Councillor Oakley, and then Councillor Goodwin.
Two things, two parts to my response here. First of all, Andrew, and to everybody that's listed on the board, including Councillor Dell, my toque goes off to you guys. The spirit that this is brought forward and is phenomenal. When I read this last week, I just thought, wow, the energy you put into this, even though there's a gazillion questions that emerge from it, I just wanted to thank you all for, the spirit and how you've brought this forward. The other piece that I'm interested in would be to see staff report from our city manager to analyze this, the opportunities, the pitfalls. There's a lot of stuff in here, potentials, and a lot of things that you'd have to overcome. So I would like to, at some point, to see that analysis.
Thanks, Daryl. Kent.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Andrew, for the presentation and for getting the group together. If we could just back up to your view of the Platzl, in your vision of what could be done there, you're proposing to remove the laneway altogether, I believe, and put a pedestrian pathway or sidewalk behind the buildings. Is that right?
Well, there's a couple of options available there. So we already have 2 lanes of traffic through that parking lot. We have one that is purely a thoroughfare that nominally serves the buildings. And then there is a parallel route right through the parking lot itself. So we have redundancy there. We have wasted space, and there is no pedestrian way. So a lot will depend on how much we want to budget to do this. But our initial suggestion for a low budget solution was to use the existing asphalt in the laneway, to remove asphalt either side of it to enable planting, and to designate that as the pedestrian access. But we are cognizant of the requirements of the business owners, and we would have to provide access over that to those businesses, both for employee access and for deliveries. And those are the sort of things that you work out through a public engagement. Through engagement owners.
Yeah,
So,
I
yes.
think it's taken as the the example that you intended it to be, Andrew. Any further comments or questions? All right, hearing none. Thanks very much, Andrew. Much appreciated. And you're welcome to stay for the balance of the meeting if you wish, or not, with your choice.
Can we ask Andrew to stop sharing his screen, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
Give me a moment.
I didn't quite, oh, there you are.
All right, awesome. Thanks again, Andrew. All right, next up, we have the establishment of the Kimberley Land Development Reserve, a report submitted by our CFO. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor McBain, thank you. And Councillor Dallin seconds. Discussion. Jim, would you like to kind of give us the essence of what we're trying to achieve here?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of the report is to request council's consideration of first 3 readings of Kimberley Land Development Reserve Fund Bylaw 2656. If the bylaw is adopted, it will eliminate the current Kimberley Reserve Fund and replace it with the new reserve. Anybody that's had a chance to look at the bylaw 453, it was adopted in 1959, and the references in there to the Municipal Act and the legislation in place at the time are really dated. And because of that, we don't necessarily follow all of the restrictions that are detailed in that bylaw. So I think it's really important that we get a bylaw in place that refers to current legislation. And essentially, we're going to carry on. Nothing else really changes other than the fact that we're adopting this new bylaw. If we do adopt it, whatever balance is in the Kimberley Reserve will be transferred into this new reserve, and we'll continue to use this as our Land Development Reserve Fund bylaw, which it's funded through the sale of land and improvements, such as the campground. And we can take money out of that reserve to fund the purchase of new land and improvements or other capital expenditures. In order to spend money in that reserve, we do have to adopt a reserve fund expenditure bylaw. So we do need to have that in place when we spend the money. But yeah, other than that, it's not really going to change the way that we do things. It just kind of brings us up to date.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Jim. Comments or questions from council? Councillor Goodwin.
The only comment is, as you have made clear, although we're calling it the Land Development Reserve Fund, it is usable for any capital infrastructure, sewage treatment plants, filtration systems, whatever we may need to spend it on.
Quite right.
Yeah.
Councillor Roberts.
Is the bylaw for expenditure just created on an as-needed basis?
The way we would do that is going through the budget process. We would identify if there were projects identified that were going to be funded from this reserve. Subsequent to that being budgeted, I would bring forward Kimberley Reserve Fund expenditure bylaw to fund those projects, but it would be determined through the budget process.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Sandra. Further? All right, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Next up, we have the first, second, and third readings for the what is being referred to as the Good Neighbor Bylaw, 2671. Mover, please. Councillor Kiddo. Councillor Roberts seconds. Discussion.
Again, a very comprehensive bylaw. Like it's a long one. There's lots of good stuff in there. Really happy to see the idling bylaw going into the new one here. 5 minutes, I think, is pretty generous, but I'm happy to see how this goes if we do get it through to the final reading.
All right. Thank you, Nigel.
I also note that it will reduce the number of bylaws that we are currently trying to work our way through by 5, I believe. 5 will be amalgamated, and I know we've got more bylaws than we know what to do with, so this will be great.
Yeah, there is definitely a consolidation. Mm-hmm. Councillor Goodwin.
So, yeah, no, I think it's a great comprehensive bylaw that touches on a lot of factors. I'd very much like to see a nice space of time between first, second, and third reading and adoption, and do some outreach to the public, let them know that it's out there so people have a chance to have a look at it. If anybody sees anything, any big red flags, they can get back to us and we could look at making any changes if we had to. But there's a lot in here, and so I don't think we should rush to finalize it. Given that people may have opinions about it.
Councillor Dallin.
2 things. Further down, there's up to $10,000 fine and 6 months imprisonment. Touches on my cautious bones. But one thing that I'm certainly in favor of is the light nuisance bylaw. And perhaps there could be some mention of the dark skies compliance. It's basically dark skies compliant light fixtures don't allow so much light pollution, so you actually get to see more of the sky at night. So that might be something that we can flesh out as part of that light nuisance component.
Oh, further? Go ahead.
Just one typo. just between, if Maurice is listening in there, just between 8.11 and 8.12, just a T missing on the end of the light. Just spotted that one yesterday.
Eagle eye.
Well done.
Nicely caught. So, Maurice, I have one question, and I guess we've been working hard at getting old bylaws updated, and slowly but surely we are doing that. The Kimberley Reserve Fund, for example, wow, 1959, that's incredible. So it's good that we're consolidating and updating. I guess what are there any specific issues that this bylaw, as it is being crafted now, are meant to address?
Well, one of the issue is related to repeat offenders. So with that new bylaw, we have more compliance tools, including the nuisance abatement fees, a compliance order that can actually be issued by the bylaw enforcement officer. And the other one is the repeat, the service calls. If a bylaw enforcement officer and RCMP are being called to a property regularly, we can issue some more fees for that. And just to add a comment to Councillor Dallim's comment, the fines up to $10,000 and 6 months in prison, that can only be issued by summary conviction, and that is done by a judge. This bylaw will be linked to our municipal information ticket bylaw, and the bylaw enforcement officer will have the possibility to issue fines, which council would approve once this bylaw is adopted. I'm going to bring back the municipal information ticket bylaw for council to approve the fines issues. So,
further?
Thank you for addressing that, Maurice. I appreciate it.
So, yeah, thank you, Maurice. I think that, bylaws in and of themselves are just bylaws, and it's really the enforcement of those bylaws that at the end of the day ensures that kind of the behavior that we expect, out in the community, in fact, happens the way it's supposed to. Hopefully this will afford an opportunity to take the repeat offenders and modify the behavior. I think it's important that we don't have $10 fines or even $100 fines. I think we need to be very strict with the issuance of our fines, and I look very forward to seeing that next bylaw when it comes in. All right, any further comments? Hearing none, move the motion on, or call the question on first, second, and third reading. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thanks very much for the work on this, Maurice. All right, next up under new business, we have the Community Economic Recovery Infrastructure Program. It's with respect to the grant that staff is putting in to install a public washroom facility in the Platzl. Mover, please. Councillor Oakley, Councillor McBain seconds. Discussion. Pam, you want to just give us?
Sure.
This is long overdue. It definitely is an issue downtown that we're looking to, get a good solution to.
Absolutely, and the province has just put this call out not that long ago, so we're coming up with some ideas for what we can do with this SAREP grant. We are allowed to submit 2 streams, and there's another one coming up next, but the washrooms are desperately needed. We've had lots of complaints from businesses with people wanting to use their washrooms, and with COVID right now, they've had to cut that. There are a couple of facilities at the tourist chalet, of course, and then one at the ice cream shack on the other corner, which have apparently been heavily used this summer, more than they ever had before, but they do close at 5 o'clock. So we're anticipating potentially an 8 to 9 or a 9 to 9 open for this washroom facility, which will be, I don't know if anybody's ever seen the Portland Loo, but it's a prefabricated washroom facility. We would actually be looking to go with one that's manufactured in Vernon. There's 2 currently in Vernon and 1 in Nelson, if anybody's ever been there to see those. They're big enough for a stroller to turn around inside, but not much else. There's no mirror. We don't want people hanging out inside there, but it will come equipped with a toilet and a sink for hand washing. It won't just be a hand sanitizer. And it'll have a lockbox on the outside for emergency services to use in case they need to get in there for any reason. And then there'll be a box on the other side with cleaning supplies.
Where would it be located?
We're considering locations. It hasn't been decided exactly where it'll be located yet.
So it's kind of like a pop-up washroom.
It is.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, thank you, Pam. Further questions? Councillor Dell?
There's enough room for a stroller. Is there enough room for a wheelchair?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Fully accessible.
Councillor Roberts?
When we were working on the washroom at the Rotary Park, an issue arose that none of us had considered. And that was that if you had a full-sized person in a wheelchair, that like say a 13-year-old or a 12-year-old boy, for instance, that the mother had to take into the washroom and handle, it meant that she had to do it on the floor, which we were already well into the development when we heard that. But apparently there are fold-down things on walls that will take that kind of weight for those situations. I just plant that seed. I don't know what you can do about it, but it really bothered me when I heard about it.
Absolutely. I'm sure they're fully accessible. Can make sure that we ask the question about that second.
Yeah, because I can't imagine changing my kid on the floor.
Absolutely.
Councillor Dell, further.
So just one other thing that I forgot to ask in a moment was electricity, heat, winterization, those concerns.
We will provide electricity, water, and sewer, but it's not going to be super warm.
Perfect.
So we don't want people hanging out in there. You won't be able to see in unless you're crouching completely down, but they do, or standing up high. They do want emergency workers to be able to see in there in case there's an emergency or something going on. They need to get in there quickly prior to getting the key. So, yeah.
Further.
Last comment.
I'm just worried about the water freezing. Is that?
That's all taken care of within the system. Yeah.
Okay.
There'll be fully insulation within that. Yeah.
Thank you.
It'll be usable all winter.
Hi, Joe.
Can you forward us some drawings of what that looked like?
I can, yeah. I will. I'll do that tomorrow.
Thank you.
Daryl?
Pam, I was just wondering about the liaison with Chamber of Commerce. Are they involved with feedback for
Yeah,
this?
both the Chamber and TK Tourism Kimberley are providing letters of support.
Yeah, okay.
They're very excited.
Oh, good. Yeah, nice.
All right, awesome. Wow, more questions about the washroom than really would get. Last call. Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. All right, second up is the second grant application for the Community Economic Recovery Infrastructure Program. And this is for revitalization of the main Platzl parking lot. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Kiddo, thank you. Councillor Dallum seconds. Pam.
Same grant stream. We are allowed to submit 2 applications under the stream. Second application is a revitalization of the downtown Platzl main parking lot. This will essentially increase safety, eliminate that patchwork asphalt that's there currently, and cover all those bare spaces that are rock. It will increase spacing from 10 to 15 spots. But it will also increase green space, and it will be fully accessible with a new walkway put in. We didn't quite go as far as Andrew's drawing with taking out that laneway entirely. What's being proposed right now is that to make that laneway one way and to kind of take a portion of it and have a fully accessible walkway down that edge, so that it takes care of any safety issues that are in that area.
I think council saw the rendering that was sent out earlier. Councillor Goodwin, then Councillor Oakley.
One of the things that Andrew raised was punching holes through the concrete in places to have more groundwater infiltration. Are we looking at some aspects of doing that?
They're mostly looking at increasing trees, so there will be some of that, increasing trees and planters and that type of thing. So we did, when we did our walkthrough, it was those grates with trees that would take some of that natural drainage opportunity there.
Councillor Oakley.
Just a quick question, might be more for Scott, but I'm just wondering the prep on or the need to work on infrastructure underground. Is there work that would have to be done first before we go after this?
Yeah, there's going to be some work. Chris Murray's been away, and the guys have been busy in construction season, so we're going to work with Chris tomorrow and start figuring out what needs to be done beforehand. But there is a window of, I believe, 2 years to complete this paving, so lots of time to get that work done.
Okay. Well, Councillor McBain.
I was going to say, it looked like, to comment or kind of go for Kent's comment, it looked like some of those hashed out areas on there were areas that I just took a quick walk through. There was already kind of existing drainage there that seemed that could be tied in pretty quickly to some kind of catchment there. So it seemed to make sense where some of those things were already laid out on the rendering, and it would be nice to see have engineering go through and see if they can kind of maximize the efficiency of those catchments. But yeah,
I think just a reminder, this is a grant application, and typically what happens after the grant is approved, all of those detailed engineering side of things are completed. So yeah, good comments though, Councillor McBain. Go ahead, Councillor.
It's a pity that we didn't know that there was other groups proposing plans here. I understand that this has all come up in a bit of a hurry, and I appreciate the hard work. But I'm just wondering how this aligns with the, probably if Troy's on the line, might be able to answer this, the initial plans we had about changing the downtown core and particularly that parking lot and road access through there.
Scott.
So that plan came forward, I believe, 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in the current 5-year plan. It didn't seem like there was much political will to change that or support from the business community. So we've decided that we'll pave it. I mean, it's in need of a paving, and it could be 5 to 10 years before we consider realigning that road through there. But it's 100% grant funded. Worst case scenario, we have to cut up that road or make some alterations to it to make it a flow through road.
Thanks,
but I would say that idea has been parked, and I haven't heard any excitement about it since. But staff think it's a good idea.
I think it was a great plan.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyway.
Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, no, I didn't really like that plan because it put a major street between the parking and where everybody's trying to walk to. And to me, that was a deficiency. And I actually like some elements of Andrew's plan that puts the walkway right up against the buildings and allows the buildings to be sort of part of a Platzl extension. So I know that we are under a very tight deadline and that we're not going to be able to completely revisit the plan. But if there is an opportunity to, as the mayor has commented, possibly fiddle with the plan a little before we actually get to construction, I think it might be worth talking to Andrew and the folks from Sustainable Kimberley about what we could incorporate in there. Scott, sorry.
Go ahead.
So we met with Andrew and some of the members of the group.
Okay.
We walked the Platzl parking lot before we knew we were going to apply for the grant.
Okay.
And I have sent out some of the pictures from Andrew's presentation to our staff.
Okay.
The problem with where that walkway is proposed to be located is it would make the road too narrow because there's a whole row of light standards there. And those would all have to be shifted with the design as presented.
So but there would be no road there. There would be a road out on the other side of the cars. Anyway, no, we won't get into that.
Let's do Thursday. Design.
I know it's too late.
Afterwards.
All right, last call. Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. All right, next up we have the 2020 year-to-date procurement report as submitted by our Chief Financial Officer. Move receipt of the report. Councillor Roberts, thank you. Councillor McBain seconds. Questions or comments from council? It's great information. it's a good reminder for us. We see these things when the budget is put together at the beginning of the year, but we don't get that much feedback as we go on what has been, has been completed. So this is an awesome report, Jim. Thank you very much, and please keep them coming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Hearing no questions or comments, just other than one, go ahead, Councillor Oakley.
The timber storage, not a question on the procurement. What is that for?
Yeah, so Scott, do you want to just make a comment on the Phantom? Well, not the Phantom, but the.
If you look in the Plateau, you'll see a beautiful timber frame storage shed, which is storing some of our supplies for events mainly, stadium seating, chairs, things that the operations crew uses in the Plateau quite often.
Okay.
So it's located just below the solar assisted car charging station.
Is that its permanent home?
No.
Okay.
To be determined.
Okay. That's what I was wondering about.
That's a good one.
Yeah, the other item on the list, and again, this is not about the procurement, but the Plateau entrance improvements. I'm racking my brain to remember a drawing of what we're looking at there. And I don't think that's ever come to council.
That was part of the CBT grant application, which certainly came to council.
Call a drawing of what that looked like. Okay, maybe.
We don't always bring drawings.
Okay.
And there was an artist conception done by Lori Joe a long time ago, you might recall seeing. But it's been so long now that.
It could be, it's a long time.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that way it'll be a surprise when you do see it.
It will be.
It'll be a surprise for us too. We're waiting patiently.
Yeah, so we're still expecting completion of at least the archways before the dead of winter. Like that's underway. Yeah.
That's been underway for a long time. I'm wondering myself, and it will be completed.
Okay.
We've contracted it out. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully soon. Okay. Hearing no further questions, we'll call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. All right. Next up, we have the couple or three check runs, 64, 65, and 66 for 2020. Move approval. Councillor McBain, Councillor Roberts seconds. Any discussion at all on any of the items? Mostly routine, I believe. All right, hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. All right, we have some items for correspondence or of correspondence today. A couple of items. Could I have a mover to receive, please? Councillor Kiddo, thank you. Councillor Roberts seconds. Any comments on either? All right, hearing none.
I guess I should just mention we're working on 1.1 for tourism grants.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I mean, I guess we'll
Councillor McBain.
be discussing Marysville Arena at some point as well here. Too.
Yep, we shall.
Yep.
Okay, call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. All right, that is the end of the agenda for the regular meeting. Question period. So we have a couple of things. I don't see any media dialed in tonight. Maurice? Can you confirm that, please?
Yes, I can confirm that there is nobody that dialed in. Maybe if you want to take the time to give the 1-800 number and the meeting number in case there is people watching on YouTube, because there's a little bit of a delay on YouTube.
Right. Okay. Great idea. So for anybody that is watching on YouTube and wishes to call in with a question, the number is 800-741-7180. That's 800-741-7180. And the meeting number, this is a little awkward, but the meeting number is 146-164-4455. Once again, that's 146-164-4455. And anybody that's watching that has a has a question is free to call in. And while we're waiting for that, we will go through the councillor items. Councillor Roberts, why don't you start us off this evening?
Okay. Nothing particularly since we met last, been involved in the election a bit and spent election night as a scrutineer. And kind of interesting to be involved with that. Everybody trying to keep socially distanced, but it went really quickly. That's it.
All right. Nigel.
No official business this week, but I would like to thank planning and Power Paving for getting some of the patches done under some really difficult circumstances. Hey, not ideal with the early winter here, but it's just good to see some of those jobs being finished up. So fantastic stuff.
Yeah, cool. Councillor Dallin.
Nothing official. Obviously, the cat's out of the bag. And I'm sure that our tourist sector is very excited about the early snow.
The cat, which cat is out of which
Sustainable Kimberley.
Okay, thank you. Kent.
No meetings to report. I would like to just make a comment. I managed to listen to Bonnie Henry's entire presentation today. We did not have a good weekend in BC, and the emphasis now growing on getting people to wear masks in stores. So a lot of people in Kimberley are not doing that yet, and it would be really good to see just about everybody put on their masks when they go into a public indoor place. So otherwise, this can go from pretty good in Kimberley to pretty lousy in Kimberley pretty quickly if we let our guards down. So
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for those comments, Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Oakley.
Ditto on that, Councillor Goodwin's comments. It's very important to be careful now. It's, boy, oh boy, that was a very nasty news release this afternoon.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah, if you go back 2 weeks ago, it was Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It relates to an awful lot of the gatherings that happened at Thanksgiving. In BC, we've been generally in the province patting ourselves on the back for the way we've handled the pandemic. The fact is, though, in the last week, we've gone from number of positive tests per testing. So if you look at the number of the percentage of positive tests for the number of tests that are done, we've gone from 1.6 or 1.7 to 2.6 to 3.3%, which is an alarming increase. Now, most of it is in the Lower Mainland, Fraser and coastal health regions, no question, but it really is a warning signal for us, exactly as Ken had mentioned, that if we don't continue to pay attention and we don't continue to be vigilant, it can turn overnight. And the fact that we've only had one confirmed case pandemic to date is a testament to, I think, the respect for both protocols and each other that the vast majority of us in the community have shown. We can always get better. There's no question we can always do better. But to date, it has been a really, really good effort on the part of the community. So let's stay the course, let's stay vigilant, and we can continue to enjoy our lives.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. I think it's important, especially given that, chatting with some of the managers at Ski Hill, they're having record sales. So it's going to be busy, and we're going to have to be very careful for the winter. So
RCR released the protocols today that they're putting in place, or at least a portion of them, and they are going to be stringent. RCR were pretty stringent through the summer at the golf course, as were all of the golf courses, but they're taking some really necessary precautions through the ski season as well.
Yeah,
it's good to see.
I just have one more item. Mayor, I haven't had any, all my meetings have been Zoom or telephone or back and forth on email. There's been no in-person meetings.
Except this one.
Yes, except for this one.
Appreciate you being here.
I have had some hiking type meetings where you're walking with people and you're 10 feet apart, and that's okay. One of them was last 2 weekends ago down at Purcell Golf's private land. And as some folks are interested in a food hub and are interested in the greenhouse processes down there. So because I was down there, I met with them and we spent 2.5 hours hiking around, having a look at the land. And then they also met with Purcell Golf with those guys, the
Yeah,
rest of them,
cool.
including the architect. See where that goes. I don't know. Anyway, it's very early days. The other part is I've been doing lots of phone meetings and email meetings with Dr. Kari Stewart-Smith and Emily Chow, who's the biologist with Glenroe, and on the initiative that's west of Mose Canyon. So that'll be coming to council in the coming weeks, what they are asking for.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Daryl. Lastly, not least,
no, just kind of no official business, but echoing a lot of the comments, Nigel's comment on the paving stuff. It's a treat now to drive up to town site. Project turned out great. I actually don't mind going to visit my parents now. And just echoing the sentiments of Councillor Oakley and Councillor Goodwin, and I know myself, I need to be better. You know, we're talking about the mask wearing. I seem to be really good when I go to big stores like that in Cranbrook, but it doesn't resonate as much. Like if I'm just going to go to the gas station or whatever, and it's a good reminder for everybody to be vigilant, because you know it's not. The message has always been out there, but it's not just you. It's the other people that you could run into, and we do have a high population of seniors in town and folks that are in the higher risk categories. And we all need to do, as the mayor said, we can all do better, myself included. And that's one thing I definitely want to do is redouble my efforts, but
awesome.
No official business other than that.
Awesome. Thanks for those comments, Jason. All right. Maurice, do we have any calls?
No calls for tonight.
All right, awesome. So we do have an in-camera session this evening that we should get to post haste. So what we need now is a motion, a notice of closed meeting. Thank you, Councillor Oakley. Councillor Dallum seconds. All those in favor? Right, that motion is carried. So we will reconvene to a closed meeting after we kind of clear the decks. 2-minute break.
Did you hear who